Sometimes just changing the order in which you do operations can make a huge difference in how easy it is to make a part. Welcome to another episode. So today I'm going to be back on the watch project. Now what I'm going to do is use the riser block I made in a previous episode. And I'm going to change the order of the operations, which will fix a problem that was vexing me before, and actually in some ways makes things easier. So let me head to the workbench and I'll show you what I'm going to do. So let me explain the order of operations as they used to be before I made this change. So the first thing is there's a notch here. This is the back left corner, by the way. You can see there's a little mark there, so I know which is the back left corner. And then there is a section on here that goes into that slot. So this locks it in location. And you can see that there is very little rotational movement when it's locked into place like that. So that's quite good alignment. And then what I would do is I would mill these surfaces here as well as the inside, resulting in something that looked like so. And you can see that this is milled. This is actually after multiple operations. So after doing that, I would take it off this jig and then bring in this other jig where I would put it on the freshly milled surface, like so, and then lock this into place. And then I have to set the rotation on this, which because this can rotate freely. It doesn't right now, and I'll explain that in a minute. And then finally I would put this into the fourth axis, and then I'd have to set the rotation alignment this way, and then I could mill this surface. And the reason I was originally using the fourth axis is to also drill these holes, but these holes are now 3D printed into the part. So let's take a look at the downside of that. If we look at this right here, you can see that the stem has a hole that goes all the way through, and it goes into the back here. Now the problem is I was milling the threads first, and then I was drilling this hole. And drilling that hole meant that I had burrs that it was raising on the inside, which of course would interfere with the threads screwing onto the back. And so what I realized is if I change the order of operations and drill this hole first as op 1 and finish the stem hole first as op 1, and then do the threads afterwards, then I might have a little bit of burr on the inside of the hole, but not around the threads. And that's okay, because you can easily take care of that by just putting a twist drill through that if you need to. Or it may be just fine, you don't have to worry about it because the stem will have plenty of clearance. So that means now the order of operations, which you'll see soon, is I mount it onto this fixture here. And then the first thing I'll do is I'll put it into the machine aligned this way so that I can finish the stem hole for the stem tube, drill all the way through, and then I put it back in like this, and then I can finish this surface. And then I can flip it over and put it on the other jig to do the other side. That turns out to be much easier and produces a better result and means I don't have to deburr the inside or have problems with the threads being messed up. The first thing I need to do is put the body into place, and you can see it doesn't fit because this body is a little bit small. So I use the trick I showed previously, using a hose clamp to tighten it just a little bit so that the body drops into place. And then I can release the hose clamp. Next is tightening the inside diameter clamp. You can see I'm getting it just snug, and then I want to give it a little whack with the dead blow hammer to make sure it's firmly in place, and then a final tightening. I'm going to use the riser that I created in a previous video, so I need a taller parallel in the back and then closing the jaws, and then put a smaller parallel in the front. Once I've done this, I can put the riser into place. It's a little hard to see here, but the small parallel makes sure that the riser is at about the right height, which may not be that important, and then the parallel on the back ensures that the fixture has exactly the right orientation so that the stem is pointing up, as you can see here. a few whacks with the dead blow hammer, checking the parallels. It wasn't quite down, so I gave it a few more whacks, and then it's down enough so that I can proceed. I'm using the G56 work offset instead of the usual G54, so first I have to set the Z height, which I'm setting to the top, as you can see here. Then I manually moved the probe to the back left and set the X and Y to 0. And then started the cycle so that I could probe the center position. You can see it's starting with the left side, and then it goes to the right side. And then it's going to do the same thing, as you can see here with the front, and then after it picks that up, it will pick up the back. And now it knows the exact position of this part. It's going to update the back left from this new center position. First thing is to mill the flat for the stem. Now here it's not actually moving any material because this part actually doesn't have enough material. It should be removing material. Then a spot drill to drill a small dimple so the drill won't wander. And then drilling the hole for the stem. And you can see this can be done without pecking. It can be just drilled straight through. The stem tube is a little bit larger in diameter than we need for the stem, so we need to widen that out with a small end mill. Then I can blow it off to mostly dry it, pull it out of the vise, and then reset up the vise so that I can put it back into the vise in the other orientation without having to do any alignment at all. Manually moving to the back left to set this as the new 0, 0 position for X and Y, and then using the probe to pick up the exact position for the back left corner that I will use to make sure that the subsequent operations are aligned correctly. And I can continue with the second operation as usual. This used to be the first operation, and the nice thing is that I didn't have to take the watch off the inside diameter fixture to perform both operations. I just had to change the orientation of the fixture in the vise. So you can see it's worthwhile rethinking the order of the operations when you are doing things with multiple setups. Just changing the order of the setups made a pretty big difference in terms of how easy it was to get the hole through the watch for the watch stem without interfering with the threads. Now, the fixtures that I have are great for producing a small number of the watch bodies, but they're not going to be the right things for production. I'm going to look at that later on. The next thing that I'm going to do in this series is look at the fit for the gaskets and the crystals to make sure that it's water resistant down to 50 meters. I'd like to thank my patrons who support me on Patreon. They're listed here. Please help me grow the channel by subscribing, give me a thumbs up, and commenting below. Again, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.